The problem with practicing is that the practicing has become a means to an end in itself. When you practice slowly, you have to practice exactly as you would when it's fast, just under a magnifying glass. Whether it's an exercise like this or a passage in a piece, we should play with joy and with some sense of love for the sound and love for the instrument. I like to think of practicing on one side of a bridge. I think of a fairy tale that I have and that I tell my kids, the three billy goats who try to cross the bridge, and there's the troll on the bridge. Actually, there's no troll on this bridge, but there's a beautiful picture of two banks and a bridge across it. On one side of the bank here is our practice life, because let's face it, practicing takes up a huge amount of a musician's life. And it can almost seem like an end in itself, but of course it's not, because where we need to get to is from this one bank across the bridge to the other bank. And on that other bank is the moment on stage where we play. And I like to think of that moment, it doesn't have to be staged, does it? It can also be an audition, or it can even be any kind of high pressure situation where suddenly you feel that you're on show. I call it high altitude, a place of high altitude. And we have to understand that this is a process and that we are crossing the bridge. The problem with practicing, or with when practicing goes wrong, is that the practicing has become a means to an end in itself. And so often I hear from students, and I have to admit as well, I've had this experience in my life, hopefully less and less, that I've practiced something and then it has taken me by surprise on stage. And I think, generally speaking, the problems come when either the practicing has been wrong, for example, too much bow, for example, not understanding that when you practice slowly, you have to practice exactly as you would when it's fast, just under a magnifying glass. For example, thinking that you practice unmusically, whatever that means, just looking at notes, just looking at intonation, and not incorporating your musical wish into what you want to do when on stage. Because, as I say, if you just practice unmusically or too slow or technically in a way that's not relevant to how you will play on stage, then suddenly you sit on stage and you want to play musically and you have ambitions to create something live for yourself, for the audience. It's not going to happen because you haven't practiced that. So it's quite an art, I think, finally, to understand how to practice for this side of the bridge. So one of my favorite exercises, and it's the place to begin your day really as a cellist, is with the 4-note exercise. 4 notes because it's 4 notes. They tend to go down a third, and the next 4 notes, let me show you, just the notes for now. All the way to the top, and on the way down, we do 1 long bow and 2 half bows. So all the way back down, not that fast. And this covers all kinds of beautiful topics, which I will then touch on individually later. It should be the moment in the day when you can feel at your most perfect on the instrument. And I don't mean that perfection should be something that reduces you, but rather that you can feel totally well with your body, well with the instrument, well with the room. Let's go even further and be really optimistic, well with life. Aren't we lucky to be able to do this at all? So, to start with, we need to sit well. Feet on the floor, legs feeling their gravity, sitting on the seat well, strong backbone, shoulders back, free neck, a feeling that the head is being pulled up to the ceiling, that the ears are in the room, that the jaw is free. The jaw is a very important part of the body that should stay free, not clenched, because not only do we create a huge amount of tension around our neck and shoulders when we clench up our jaw, but we don't hear properly, which goes into one of our topics, intonation. So this 4-note exercise should be a moment where you can feel gravity of the arm, the movement of the fingers, the weight of the bow, the beauty of the resonance and the overtone of the cello, and the beginning of the wish of legato, where one note is so interesting constantly and then leads into the next. It's going towards my A. My A is going towards my B. My B to my C. You can do some with vibrato and some without. The most beautiful sound has to be first without. The vibrato is just a little extra on the end. And rhythm is also important. To the C, to the D. Listening to my sound in the room, feeling my belly. I can get as much beautiful resonance through my bow that my left hand just sits on the string well. I can feel the vibration through both fingers. Both fingertips, right and left. To the G, leading up to the A, to the B. My left hand palm is very free. To the A, to the B. Breathing out helps, that's why I'm also speaking. A. Like a beautiful piece of Beethoven. To the C. To the D. And then I come down. The beautiful bow chain. My arm is swinging, but keeping its balance, not too much. I'm trying to have a straight bow, but not. It's a joy to practice this 4-note exercise, and that's really the basis, actually. And I could practice it even slower, but it might get too boring for you on camera. But you can play it as slow as you want. Be fascinated in every moment of the hair. Be fascinated in the bow changes to make them as smooth as you can with the fingers. And make it the start of your day in which you plan to continue. So start as you wish to continue. Whether it's an exercise like this or a passage in a piece, we should play with joy and with some sense of love for the sound and love for the instrument and musicality, I could call it. They did a study, and apparently I believe it's something like 500 repetitions are needed for a child to learn something, unless they learn it through play or song, in which case it takes them 10 or 20 repetitions only. Some kind of statistic close to that, which shows that through joy and play we learn much faster and we remember in a completely different way. I'm sure it goes into our long-term memory instead of staying just in our short-term memory and ready to be discarded when the next more interesting thing comes along.